The Hyundai Alcazar is the latest launch from Hyundai in India, and it's no secret, it is based on the Hyundai Creta, but it's longer, it's got more comfort on the inside, and it's got 3 rows of seats. Now the Alcazar and the Creta, they overlap a fair bit in terms of prices. So if you're in the market for a mid-size SUV, which one should you be picking? That is exactly what we're going to try and answer today. Welcome to Evo India and welcome to our comparison test of the Hyundai Alcazar and Hyundai Creta. We're going to be talking styling, interiors, features, space, comfort, boot space, and obviously driving impressions. But before we go ahead, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel and leave a comment down below. On first impressions, will you pick the Alcazar or the Hyundai Creta? We'd love to know. We have to start with dimensions because the Alcazar is a longer version of the Creta, and it's not just the rear overhang that's longer. They've actually done work to increase the wheelbase. The Alcazar's wheelbase is 150 mm longer than the Creta's. The overall length is 230 mm longer. With this update, they've also made the Alcazar taller. It's now 57 mm taller than the Creta, and it's slightly wider, 10 mm wider, which means 5 mm on each side wider than the Creta. So this is the slightly larger car. You get an LED strip plus vertically stacked LED elements on the sides. You get a light bar with L-style DRL elements. The grille is reminiscent of the N-Line with the logo on the solid panel, horizontal slats in the front, and they're with black chrome and a chunky silver bumper. You get dark chrome here as well, but with horizontal slats you also get vertical slats and a different looking bumper. The top end variants get 18-inch wheels. The Creta's top end gets 17-inch wheels, and it's only when you go to the N-Line that you get 18-inch wheels. The plastic cladding all around the car is in gloss black. This one gets matte plastic cladding. These roof rails are chunkier and functional. These roof rails are non-functional, so you can't put a roof box or a carrier. The distinctive C-pillar element is in gloss black, and you get a glass here for the people in the third row. You get a silver C-pillar element here, and obviously since there's no third row, there's no window in the back. You get a light bar in the back, vertically stacked tail lamps. You get this metallic type finish, but it's actually plastic on the rear, and chunky rear bumpers. You get a light bar just like on the Alcazar, but L-shaped tail lamps and a different bumper down below. The color scheme of the interiors is brown, and you get the same thing on the upholstery as well. The interior color scheme is a white and grey color scheme, and the same thing is reflected on the upholstery, a white and grey, but this stains easily. This piece of trim looks like it's finished in metal, even though it's actually plastic, and you get buttons for the cooled seats. The central tunnel trim is a gloss black finish, and you get toggle switches for the ventilated seats, not buttons. You get a sunroof, but only on the turbo-petrol, not on the diesel. You get a panoramic sunroof even on the diesel variants. You get electric seat adjust for the driver as well as the passenger, plus the driver's seat gets a memory function. You get an electrically adjustable driver's seat, but no electrically adjustable passenger seat. It's manual adjust and no memory function at all. And you obviously get a lot of common features like the twin 10.25-inch screens, the 360-degree camera, dual zone climate control, wireless phone charger, wired CarPlay and Android Auto, Bose sound system, auto wipers, auto headlamps, and safety features like 6 airbags and level 2 ADAS. You get the option of a bench or captain chairs in the second row. The captain chairs have an armrest, winged style headrest, and adjustable thigh support. No captain seats, only a bench in the second row, but you do get an armrest, no adjustable under thigh support, and instead of winged headrest, you get this soft neck pillow. You get buttons accessible from the rear seat to move the front seat ahead and out of the way. To move the front seat, you've got to do it manually from here. You get a tray table with a cup holder and a pocket down below. No tray table in the rear seats, but you do get this pocket. You get a sunshade, and thankfully you do get a sunshade in the second row over here. These captain seats are also ventilated, and the button is right here on the armrest. No ventilated seats in the second row. Now the big thing that the Alcazar has that the Creta doesn't have is a third row. But here, space is limited for adults. It's better for younger children. You've got a lack of under-thigh support, but you do have features like cup holders, USB Type-C ports, and your own AC fan speed control. Boot space on the Alcazar, 180 liters, but you can expand that. You put the third row down and it expands to 570 liters. Now this one is the 6-seater, so the captain seats don't fold down flat. But if you get the 7-seater with the bench in the center, you can fold that down further and get a lot of room in the back to store long luggage. Boot space here is 433 liters, but like in the Alcazar, you can fold the second row down here to expand it even further. Okay, so new Alcazar, I've already driven it before. I'm going to put a link in the video right now so you can go to that video and see my detailed impressions of the Alcazar if you want to. But now let's talk about it from the perspective of the Creta in terms of the driving experiences. First of all, the big difference between Alcazar and Creta is that the Creta gets 3 engine options, the Alcazar gets only 2 engine options. So the Alcazar I'm driving right now is the turbo-petrol Alcazar. 158 horsepower, 253 Nm of torque, 7-speed DCT, option of a manual. That's identical to the Creta. The Alcazar also gets a diesel engine. Again, same 1.5 CRDI, identical to the Creta. That comes with the choice of an automatic, manual, exactly like the Creta. But the big difference is the third engine, the 1.5 naturally aspirated petrol engine. That the Alcazar does not get, and the implications of that is that the Alcazar's starting price is a little bit higher than the Hyundai Creta's starting price. That's because these two engines are a lot more expensive than that naturally aspirated engine. Logical. But that's been done because that 1.5 is a little weedy and it just won't be able to deal with the weight of the Alcazar, especially when there are people loaded inside it. The Alcazar is a little heavier than the Creta, about 100 kilos approximately. That's not the problem. The problem is when you fill 7 people in here, load it up with luggage on a roof carrier, then fire that 1.5 engine to the naturally aspirated 1.5 engine to pull it along would be a fair bit of work. Hence, no 1.5 nat asp. Turbo petrol. How different is it to the Creta? Honestly, it feels very similar. It is the same engine after all. You got similar outputs, you got similar refinement. The gears, they feel very similar. The gear shifts feel very similar. In terms of acceleration as well, it feels very close, honestly. There's very little in it between the Creta and the Alcazar. And it's quick. The Alcazar is definitely quick. Can you feel a delta in performance? Honestly, from first impressions, back to back, it's a very small delta. The Alcazar may be slightly slower than the Creta, but it's not something that you'll notice in everyday driving. Okay, maybe when you load up the Alcazar, when you've got 6 or 7 and you've got a roof box and you've got luggage on top, that's when you will feel the performance deficit. The Creta just simply can't carry so many things or so many people, and therefore it will not feel as sluggish and slow. When this is full, you will definitely feel a little bit of a performance difference, but off the bat, it's pretty even Steven. Ride quality. The Alcazar is running on 18-inch wheels. The Creta inline also runs on 18-inch wheels, but along with that, it has slightly retuned suspension and stuff like that. So that feels a little more firm and a little stiffer. What we're comparing this to is the standard Creta. And in that respect, the standard Creta does ride a little bit better. They have softened up this Alcazar. They have made it a lot more livable than before. Earlier, the Alcazar was fairly stiff, and with that stiffness came a little bit of discomfort and a little bit of jarriness in the cabin. But I think that's been evened out. It's been quietened out. I think a little bit of the bracing and the reinforcement that they've done to this platform also helps just in terms of the NVH when it goes over bumps and stuff like that. So it feels a lot more composed. The ride quality on the Alcazar is a definite improvement, and I'm sure if you're somebody who's looking at the Alcazar for the second row, which a lot of you will be and should be, the improved ride quality will definitely help. It is a little soft, so that when you're cornering, when you're pushing it hard around corners, you do feel that softness, particularly from the rear. It just bucks a little bit under the forces. But for everyday use, for the sort of driving an average Alcazar will be doing, this setup works fine. And I think it's an improved setup from before. Braking, the Alcazar now gets rear disc brakes, so does the Creta, and it does feel strong under braking. You've got good pedal feel. You just have to get used to the sensitivity of it. When I jumped in its car, I slammed the brakes expecting it to be a little dull, but it's pretty sharp. And once you get used to that sharpness, it's very easy to modulate and drive around. And the brakes are strong, and you need strong brakes, particularly in a car that's going to be carrying a lot of people and a lot of weight. And overall, the Alcazar, I feel like, is a fairly well-judged package. It does feel quite nice, particularly if you're looking for a comfortable car, stress-free, quiet, second-row comfort, that sort of thing. We're not driving the diesel today, and like I told you earlier, the diesel Alcazar does not get the sunroof, so that's a big change. But that aside, yeah, it's pretty much similar. Another thing that I like about the Alcazar is the brown interiors. You know, the Creta's white interiors, they will stain fairly easily, particularly if you're wearing denim, if you're wearing jeans. It tends to hold a little bit of mud, and then when you sit inside the car, it just rubs onto the seats, and then it's very hard to get out. You've got to really clean the car properly regularly to sort of prevent that sort of brownish red staining that happens on the interiors of all our cars with white interiors. And you're going to avoid that completely in the Alcazar because it's just going to get blended into the brown seats over here. So that's a good thing. Yeah, overall Alcazar, very nice. Now let's jump into the Creta and see how it's different compared to the Alcazar. Okay, jump straight in the Creta, and I'm immediately feeling like this is a lot slower. And that's because this Creta has the engine that the Alcazar doesn't have. This is the 1.5 NAT-ASP CVT engine. And in terms of outputs, it's nowhere close to the turbo. And because of that, it just feels a lot slower, a lot more lethargic. But then again, this is the best-selling Creta. This is the Creta that really pulls in the numbers, makes the Creta such a popular car in the segment. If we were to compare turbo to turbo, then the Creta would be marginally faster than the Alcazar. I remember the Creta N-Line, which shares the same drivetrain, there's no drivetrain differences between N-Line Creta and Turbo Creta. They had a claimed 0 to 100 time of 8.9 seconds. A little more than half a second is going to be the delta in terms of 0 to 100 times for the Creta to Alcazar. And that, it makes a slight difference. It's not going to make a big difference in real life. But when you compare it to this, there's definitely a big performance delta. But then there is a big price delta as well. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. More importantly, let's talk the ride and handling balance. The ride quality in the Creta is just a slight bit more plush, and I suspect that's because of the 17-inch wheels and the lower weight. And two of those combined just allow the Creta to feel a little more plush on the road. It just soaks up bumps, soaks up uneven patches a little more confidently. Both of them damp the sounds out really well, and they no longer feel really harsh inside the cabin. That was another thing that changed to this update with the Creta, and both the Alcazar and the Creta deal with that really well. So ride quality wise, the Creta has a slight advantage, but again, no longer is the Alcazar way behind and a compromise on the ride quality front. But yes, in terms of driving dynamics, the Creta just does a better job. I think it's the shorter wheelbase combined with the lower weight. It just makes it feel a bit more nimble, a bit more enthusiastic. When you chuck it into a bend, it responds more willingly. In the bend, it just feels a little more comfortable, a little more settled. The Alcazar's rear still feels a little all over the place, and you don't feel that in the Creta so much. But if you're somebody who's a keen driver, I would recommend the Creta, unless of course you need the third row of seats. If you're going to be doing a lot of driving and you're going to be spending a lot of time in the Creta's driver's seat, particularly in twisty, windy roads, the Creta is a little better. In terms of braking performance, again, the Creta also got the upgrade to disc brakes, so the delta in braking performance is not going to be much. If there is any, it's going to be down to the traction available at the time and the weight in the car that the car will have to deal with. But it feels strong, it feels like it bites well, and it feels rather firm. But yeah, very few downsides to the Creta. I think there is a little more equipment in the Alcazar, which is nice, but then you're paying a little more for it as well. So yeah, there you go, Creta versus Alcazar. The Creta, it is the more affordable one, it is the more practical, but again, it's one car based off the other. There's so many similarities between them. It's honestly hard to call out differences over here because fundamentally underneath they are the same thing. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to what sort of a car you want to buy. Now let's talk prices. At the top end, when you're comparing turbo petrol DCT specs The Alcazar, it costs rupees 1.3 lakhs more than the Creta. But for that money, you're getting a lot more as well, particularly in the second row. You're getting those very comfortable captain seats. You're getting a third row of space, but more importantly, you're getting little knickknacks like the winged headrest, the adjustable thigh support, the tray table that just elevates the second row a little bit. If you're somebody who's going to be chauffeur driven around, I think that 1 lakh rupees is definitely worth the premium over the Creta, because you're going to be a lot happier in the back seat of the Alcazar. If not, and if you don't need the 3 rows, the Creta is definitely a great buy. You have the compact dimensions making it easier in the city, and it is a nice car to drive. So there you have it, Alcazar versus Creta. You can't go wrong with either. So which one are you going to pick? Let me know in the comments below.